Good morning and welcome to another episode of the Monday Minute brought to you by the Independent Dealer Podcast and our great friends at Neo. If you don't have a scoring model, Neo is one to check out. We've been using it for about a year. Wonderful product. It will definitely help your game when it comes to buy here, pay here. Today we're going to talk about one of the hardest things to do as an owner, and that is firing employees. It sucks. I'm just going to be real. It sucks. It sucks for you. It sucks for the employee. But there's some ways to make it suck less. So here we go. Again, one of the hardest parts of being an owner. Number two, people fire themselves, and you got to remember that. If you do your job properly as an employer, people are going to fire themselves. The only caveat to that is if you go through slow times and you have to do layoffs. That's not something we're going to talk about today, though. Hard, honest evals with employees will cut down on that. Now, last week we went through the evaluation process. If you do this properly, you won't have it being so hard. An employee won't be surprised, and we'll get to that too. Give employees the tools and the training they need. It's hard for smaller businesses to do that all the time because it's maybe we don't have time. Maybe we don't have the resources to give them the tools and the training. But there are great resources on the internet you can find to make sure they have what they need. If you do your evaluations right, most will leave before you ever have to fire them. Remember that. Last thing is, before we get into the HR process, is nobody wins on this. This is it's not a good thing for the employer. Number one, they've taken the time to hire the person. It's cost money. They've taken the time to train the person. If you didn't take the time to train the person, that's on you, employer. But you don't win as an employer. Your employee doesn't win because he's going to have to be back in the job market. And he's probably got a family. He or she probably has a family that they need to feed and bills they have to pay. All right. So if you're going to have to fire someone, you've got to have a good written HR process. I did not have this for many years, and luckily Natasha, who's our HR manager and our comptroller, really has done well with this. She's defined it. We are still in a working situation to make it perfect, but it's a lot better than it used to be. Number one, there should never be a surprise to you or to the employee when you fire them. And that means you've got to write everything down. You have to clearly communicate your expectations of your job to your employee. You've got to train, and you got to have good evaluations, which we talked about last week. Make sure you go back and check that out. When the surprise is gone, you've got to be prepared for the termination. And that means you've written everything down. You've gone over everything. And you walk into the meeting with that employee with everything written down, with the documents, and say, okay, this is how it is. This is why you're being let go. Number three is a hard thing too. This is not a negotiation with that employee at all. You're not walking there for them to keep their job. You need to terminate them because you've been through all this process. Number four is hard. Sometimes we get to know employees personally, especially in a smaller business, because you've worked beside them day to day and you see them not doing the things that you expect out of them. And you may want to air your grievances. Don't do it. You cannot walk in there and lambaste the employee because that's not going to be good. For one, it's going to get back to other people and they're not going to want to work for you. If you walk in there and just say, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you suck, you're not a good person, you're not going to win friends and influence people. And that's what we're really here for, is to make your office a great place to work. And if you follow these rules and you do hard, honest evaluations, nobody has a surprise, you're prepared, this will go much smoother. And the biggest thing, don't make this a surprise. Go through the whole process, write it down, and next time you have to fire an employee, it won't be so hard. Thanks for listening, and talk to you next week.